"You let me sleep in your bed. Rancher, get ready. We're having babies," said the Apache Fugitive woman. The sun was just beginning its climb, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks, and the rancher moved slowly through his land, feeling the familiar crunch of the dirt beneath his boots. He had lived here for many years, a solitary man who knew every hill, every creek, and every hidden corner of his property. Life had been simple, quiet, and predictable. That quiet was something he had cherished deeply, though he sometimes wondered if it left him lonely. He paused for a moment near the edge of the ranch, squinting against the morning sun. In the distance, a thin figure moved, weaving carefully between rocks and shrubs. At first, he thought it might be one of the lost travelers who sometimes wandered near his land, but as the figure drew closer, he could see a woman. She moved with caution and a kind of desperate grace, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back and an air of urgent determination. The rancher's instincts told him to be careful. Strangers could bring trouble, and his life, though quiet, had taught him the importance of vigilance. Yet something about her, perhaps the way she carried herself, the mixture of fear and determination in her posture, made him hesitate. He had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving. Some people ran from danger, some sought it, and some were caught in circumstances they could not control. The woman reached the small rise at the edge of his property and finally noticed him. Their eyes met, and she froze, a flicker of recognition and fear passing across her face. The rancher could see that she was weary, her clothes dusty and worn, and her eyes told a story of struggle. He took a slow step forward, letting his presence be known but showing no aggression. "Hello there," he called out in a calm voice. "You're a long way from anywhere safe. Are you lost?" The woman's eyes darted around as if searching for an escape route before settling on him again. Her voice, soft but steady, replied, I need a place to rest, just for a night." The rancher studied her carefully. He could tell that she was wary, that every movement was measured and cautious. She was clearly not used to trusting people, and her words carried both desperation and courage. He knew that offering shelter could be risky, but there was something in her eyes that told him she meant no harm. After a long pause, he nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "You can rest here, but you stay out of the livestock in the barns and you follow my rules." "Understood." The woman nodded quickly, relief washing over her features. She moved closer, keeping her distance but trusting him enough to accept his help. The rancher led her to a small guest area in his home, a simple room with a bed, a wooden chair, and a window that looked out over the plains. The place was humble but clean, and it smelled faintly of fresh wood and herbs. "You can stay here tonight," he said. "I'll get you some food, and tomorrow we'll see what comes next." The woman's lips curved into a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had been on the run for far too long. As she settled onto the bed, the rancher watched from the doorway. There was something unusual about her presence. She was cautious, yes, but there was also a quiet strength, a sense of resilience that made her stand out. He could see that she had faced challenges, perhaps more than most people could imagine, and yet she had survived. That survival instinct, he realized, was something rare and powerful. The evening fell quickly, and the sky turned a deep shade of blue. Stars began to appear, scattered across the heavens like diamonds on a velvet cloth. The rancher prepared a simple meal for the two of them, some bread, cheese, and fresh water from the well. He placed it on a small table near her room and knocked gently. "Dinner is ready," he said. The woman appeared at the doorway, her hands folded nervously in front of her. "Thank you," she said again. She accepted the meal with quiet dignity, and together they sat in the modest dining area. There was a long silence, broken only by the soft sounds of eating and the distant calls of night birds. "You don't have to tell me anything if you don't want to," the rancher said finally. "But if you're going to stay here, I need to know you're not hiding trouble." The woman looked down at her hands for a moment, then back at him. I'm not from around here, she admitted. I've been traveling for a long time. I'm trying to find a place to be safe. The rancher nodded. He understood that better than anyone. Life on the frontier was hard, and survival often meant moving from place to place, never staying long enough to be noticed or caught. He respected her honesty and the courage it must have taken to speak to him. "Safety is a good thing to seek," he said. "You've found it here, at least for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest." The woman nodded again, a faint smile on her lips. There was a sense of relief in her expression, the kind that comes when a weary traveler finally finds shelter after a long journey. The rancher felt a quiet satisfaction as well. He had helped someone in need, and while it was only a small act, it felt significant. As the night deepened, the wind outside carried with it the sounds of the plains, the rustling of grass, the distant howl of a coyote, the soft creaking of the ranch house as it settled under the night sky. The woman lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the path that had brought her here. It had been long and filled with danger, but for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of calm. The rancher, meanwhile, sat by the window, looking out at the darkened land. He thought about the strange turn his life had taken today, about the unexpected visitor who had appeared out of nowhere. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he felt that this encounter was more than a coincidence. Sometimes life had a way of placing people in each other's paths when they needed it most. As sleep began to claim them both, the room filled with a quiet peace. The woman, though exhausted, felt safe. The rancher, though cautious, felt a connection to someone who had entered his life suddenly and without warning. That night marked the beginning of something neither of them could have anticipated, a bond that would grow, change, and challenge them in ways they had never imagined. The first part of their story was simple: a woman seeking shelter, a rancher offering it, and the cautious trust that began to form between them. It was a fragile trust, built on necessity and survival, but it was the first step toward something more profound. Outside, the plains stretched endlessly, indifferent to the small human drama unfolding in the modest ranch house. Yet within its walls, a quiet story was beginning, one of courage, resilience, and the tentative beginnings of connection. Morning would come soon, bringing new challenges and choices. But for this night, they had found a moment of respite. And sometimes, that was enough to begin a story that could change everything. The morning sun broke gently over the horizon, spilling gold across the rolling hills and casting long shadows over the ranch. Birds sang in the crisp air, and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze added a peaceful soundtrack to the world. Inside the small ranch house, the Apache woman stirred awake, stretching her arms and letting out a soft sigh. She felt a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty, relief for the safety she had found, and uncertainty for the life she was stepping into. The rancher had been awake for some time, tending to chores before the day became too hot. He was accustomed to the rhythm of the land, feeding the animals, checking the fences, and preparing for the day ahead. Yet, his mind kept returning to the woman in his guest room. She was quiet, strong, and clearly intelligent, but there was also a softness in her that intrigued him. He wondered about the journey that had brought her here and the experiences she had endured. When she appeared at the kitchen doorway carrying a small bowl of water, the rancher greeted her with a nod. "Morning," he said simply. "Sleep well." She gave a small smile, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Better than I have in a long time," she replied. Her voice carried a sense of calm, but there was also an underlying tension, a wariness that told the rancher she was still on alert, still guarding herself against a world that had not been kind. Breakfast was simple: bread, some cheese, and a few fresh fruits from the small garden. As they ate, they spoke cautiously at first, exchanging small details about their lives without revealing too much. The rancher learned that she had traveled a great distance, that her people had faced many hardships, and that she had been forced to flee for reasons she did not fully explain. She, in turn, listened as he spoke of the ranch, of his years alone, and the routines that had become both comforting and monotonous. As the sun rose higher, the rancher decided it was time to introduce her to the land. "If you're going to stay, even just for a short while, you'll need to know the ranch," he said, gesturing to the wide open fields and the barn in the distance. She nodded, curiosity and eagerness flickering across her face. The morning was spent moving through the ranch together. The woman learned quickly, picking up the names of animals, the sounds of the land, and the subtle signs of changing weather. She showed herself to be capable and intelligent, asking questions and offering thoughtful observations. The rancher watched her with quiet admiration. He had expected someone weary and fragile, but what he found instead was a resilient, resourceful woman who had survived challenges he could hardly imagine. By mid-morning, they reached the barn. The smell of hay and animals filled the air. "We have to feed the horses and check the fences," the rancher explained. She rolled up her sleeves without hesitation and began helping, her movements careful but confident. He realized that this was more than just work for her. It was a way to prove herself, to show that she could contribute and survive in a place unfamiliar to her. As the day wore on, their conversations deepened. They shared stories of family, of childhood, of hopes and fears. She spoke of her life among the Apache, of the strength of her people, and the lessons she had learned from hardship and survival. He spoke of solitude, of learning to rely on oneself, and of the small joys that life on the ranch could bring. With each story, a subtle trust began to grow between them. It was during a quiet moment, sitting by the creek that ran along the edge of the property, that she spoke of something more personal. Her voice was almost a whisper, carried by the gentle rush of water. "I have been running for so long," she said. "It feels strange to rest without fear, even if just for a little while." The rancher nodded, understanding more than words could convey. "Rest is necessary," he said. "Even the strongest need it. You've been carrying too much for too long. Here, you can leave some of that behind, even if only for today." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind, the water, and the soft sounds of animals in the distance. In that quiet space, something shifted, a subtle bond forming not through words but through presence and understanding. The rancher realized that she had a depth to her, a strength born from survival, but also a capacity for trust and connection. The afternoon brought new tasks. They repaired a broken fence together, lifted hay bales, and tended to the animals. The woman worked tirelessly, and the rancher could not help but be impressed by her dedication and determination. She had a way of moving through the land that felt natural, as if she had been part of it all along. Even as they worked, they laughed at small mistakes and shared stories, their camaraderie growing with each passing hour. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, they returned to the house, tired but satisfied. Dinner was quiet, a comfortable silence settling between them. It was the kind of silence that comes when two people share effort, understanding, and mutual respect. Afterward, the woman moved to the porch, gazing at the stars beginning to appear in the deepening sky. The rancher joined her, leaning against the railing. Neither spoke at first, letting the night speak for them. Then she turned slightly, looking at him with a mix of curiosity and sincerity. "Thank you for today," she said softly, "for letting me be here, for not judging me, for trusting me." The rancher shrugged, trying to appear casual, but inside he felt the same gratitude. "You've earned it," he said. "It's not often someone comes along who can handle this place as well as you have." There was a moment of silence again, comfortable and profound. The rancher realized that he was beginning to care for her, not just as a guest, but as a person whose presence had quietly changed his life. She, too, felt a shift, an unfamiliar warmth that came from feeling accepted, understood, and seen for who she truly was. As the night deepened, the wind carrying the soft sounds of the plains, they retired to their rooms. Sleep came easily, though thoughts of the day lingered in both of their minds. Each had been through hardships and solitude, yet they had found in each other a tentative connection, a sense that perhaps life could offer more than mere survival. The bond between them continued to grow not through grand gestures, but through simple acts, sharing work, sharing meals, sharing stories, and sharing silence. It was in these small moments that trust began to solidify, forming a foundation that neither could ignore. They were learning to rely on each other, to understand each other, and to accept the complexities of two very different lives intersecting in an unexpected place. By the end of the second day, it was clear that their relationship had changed. The rancher found himself watching her more closely, noticing the way she moved, the expressions on her face, and the strength in her eyes. She, in turn, felt a growing respect and affection for him, recognizing the quiet kindness, steady reliability, and protective nature that had brought her a sense of security she had long missed. The evening ended with the soft glow of lanterns inside the ranch house and the endless expanse of stars outside. They had shared not just a day of work, but a day of understanding, laughter, and connection. Both knew that challenges lay ahead, that the world outside the ranch could be dangerous and unforgiving. But for now, they had found something rare, a bond formed through trust, respect, and the simple act of sharing life, even if only for a day. And in that bond, both the rancher and the woman began to see the possibility of something more. Not a life without challenges, but a life shared, where strength and courage were met with understanding and companionship. It was the beginning of a deeper connection, one that would grow and evolve in the days to come, shaping both of their lives in ways neither could yet imagine. The morning was calm, with a soft golden light spilling over the ranch and warming the wooden beams of the small house. The Apache woman rose before the sun fully climbed the sky, stretching and listening to the gentle sounds of the land. The rancher had already begun his chores, the rhythmic creak of the barn door and the distant calls of his animals, a familiar and comforting background. The world felt alive yet peaceful, a stark contrast to the days she had spent running, always fearing for her life. As she stepped outside, the rancher looked up from the well where he was drawing water. Their eyes met, and he offered a small nod of greeting. There was a quiet ease between them now, a familiarity that had begun to grow through shared work, conversation, and simple companionship. Neither needed to speak much. Even in silence, they communicated, learning each other's rhythms and moods. The day began with chores as usual. Together, they tended to the livestock, mended fences, and checked the pastures for signs of trouble. She worked with a careful focus, her hands steady and sure, yet there was an occasional softness in her movements, a gentleness that contrasted with the harshness of her journey and the strength of her character. The rancher could not help but notice these details, the way she paused to observe a bird in the distance, the way she gently spoke to the horses, or the small smile that appeared when she accomplished a task with skill. By mid-morning, they had taken a break near the small creek that ran through the property. The sound of flowing water filled the air, mingling with the soft rustling of leaves and distant animal calls. They sat side by side on a large rock, sharing a simple meal of bread and fruit. There was a comfortable quiet as they ate, a sense that words were not always needed to understand each other. Finally, the woman spoke, her voice low but steady. "I have never had a place like this before," she said, looking out over the land. "Somewhere safe, somewhere I can just be." She turned to the rancher, her eyes reflecting a mix of hope and vulnerability. "It feels strange to feel this calm after so long on the run." The rancher considered her words carefully. He knew she carried a lifetime of hardships and fears, and yet there was a strength within her that impressed him daily. "This place isn't perfect," he said quietly, "but it's safe, and I'll do what I can to keep it that way." You've earned this peace." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment, studying his expression, sensing the sincerity behind his words. There was a depth of trust forming, a quiet understanding that had grown from shared labor, conversation, and the passing of time. It was more than companionship. It was the recognition of kindred spirits, two people who had survived alone and were beginning to find strength in each other. The afternoon brought new work. They repaired a section of fence that had been damaged in a recent storm. She lifted and placed the heavy wooden posts with careful precision, and he helped, guiding her movements when needed but allowing her independence. Together, they worked in silence, punctuated only by the soft sounds of the land and the occasional instruction or suggestion. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the rancher noticed a subtle change in her demeanor. She was quieter than usual, thoughtful and almost nervous, as if something important weighed on her mind. He sensed that the moment they had been building toward, though neither had acknowledged it, was approaching. That evening, after the work was done and the animals were fed, they sat together near the fire pit outside the house. The flames cast warm, flickering light across their faces, illuminating their expressions in soft gold. The air was cool, carrying the earthy scent of the land and the distant sweetness of wildflowers. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage, and then spoke. Her voice was steady but carried the weight of her emotions. "Rancher," she said, her eyes meeting his, "there is something I must tell you, something I have been holding back because I did not know how you would respond." He leaned forward slightly, sensing the gravity in her tone. "You can tell me anything," he replied. "I promise." She looked down for a moment, then back at him, her eyes shining with determination and vulnerability. "You let me sleep in your bed, rancher," she began, a small, wry smile appearing. "And I need you to be ready, we're going to have babies." The rancher blinked, startled, the words catching him off guard. His mind raced, trying to comprehend the sudden and bold confession. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw no deception, only honesty, courage, and a deep, abiding trust. The words that had initially shocked him slowly settled into understanding. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled, sending sparks upward into the night sky, and the world felt suspended in that space between uncertainty and revelation. Then the rancher spoke, his voice low but steady. You mean that seriously?" She nodded. "I do. I trust you. I have never trusted anyone like this before, and I believe we can face this together if you are willing." Her gaze was unwavering, filled with hope and sincerity. The rancher leaned back, letting her words sink in. He had lived a life of solitude, guarding himself against the dangers and disappointments that came with trust. Yet here was someone who had broken through his walls, someone whose presence had quietly changed his life in ways he had not anticipated. He felt a mixture of awe, fear, and an unexpected warmth at the thought of a future that involved her and their potential children. I don't know what to say," he admitted finally. "This is unexpected, but I can see your heart and I believe you. I believe in us." A gentle smile spread across her face, and relief shone in her eyes. She reached out, placing her hand over his, a simple yet profound gesture of connection. In that touch, they both felt the strength of the bond they had nurtured over the past days, a bond built on trust, shared labor, stories, and the quiet understanding of each other's hearts. They sat together for a long while, speaking quietly about the future, about challenges, and about the life they could build. They discussed the responsibilities of raising children, of surviving in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving, and of relying on each other for support, protection, and companionship. The rancher spoke honestly about his fears and hopes, and she listened with patience and understanding, offering her own thoughts and wisdom. By the time the stars were fully out, sparkling in the clear night sky, they had formed a plan, a shared vision of family, safety, and partnership. The fear and uncertainty that had once shadowed her life were now met with the promise of love, trust, and stability. The rancher, too, felt a new sense of purpose, realizing that his life of solitude had prepared him for this moment in ways he had never imagined. As they returned to the house, the fire casting a warm glow behind them, the world outside felt less daunting. Together, they had taken the first step into a life that would challenge them, teach them, and transform them. They had faced the truth of their feelings, embraced vulnerability, and found courage in honesty. That night, as they settled into the quiet comfort of the house, both lay awake for a while, reflecting on the moment that had changed everything. The Apache woman felt a sense of relief and hope she had never known. The rancher felt a mixture of awe and gratitude, knowing that the bond they shared was rare, profound, and worth every risk and challenge. The fire in the hearth burned low, casting long shadows across the room, and the night held a sense of promise. Both knew that life would not always be easy, but they had found in each other a partner, a confidant, and a source of strength. Their connection was no longer tentative. It had become real, undeniable, and full of potential. And in that moment, they understood that love, trust, and courage could emerge in the most unexpected places, that shared experiences and mutual respect could create a foundation strong enough to face the unknown. The night stretched on, carrying the soft sounds of the plains, the whisper of the wind, and the quiet heartbeat of a story just beginning, a story of family, hope, and the transformative power of connection. The morning air was crisp and filled with the scent of dew on grass. The rancher and the Apache woman rose early, their minds already turning to the tasks ahead. Life on the ranch had always been demanding, but now it held a deeper significance. Each chore, each moment of care for the animals and the land, felt intertwined with their shared future. They moved together with quiet coordination, understanding each other's habits and rhythms without words. The rancher started by checking the fences along the eastern pasture, while the woman fed the chickens and gathered eggs from the coops. Her movements were careful yet confident, a sign of her growing familiarity with the ranch. Though she had been a stranger only days before, she now acted as if this place were her own, her eyes alert to every detail, noticing things the rancher sometimes overlooked. He watched her for a moment, silently appreciating her dedication and attentiveness. She had a way of bringing life and energy to even the simplest tasks. By mid-morning, they had begun to repair a section of the fence that had been weakened by recent storms. Together, they lifted posts, hammered rails, and worked side by side in comfortable silence. Occasionally, they exchanged brief remarks, small jokes, or words of encouragement. Laughter came easily, and the sound seemed to echo across the open land, mingling with the calls of birds and the rustling of leaves. Despite the growing comfort between them, challenges were never far away. The Apache woman had her own fears, fears of being discovered, of losing the fragile safety she had found, and of facing a world that had not always been kind to her. She sometimes paused while working, looking toward the horizon as if weighing her options, considering the possibility that her past might catch up with her. The rancher noticed these moments and responded with quiet reassurance. "You don't need to worry," he said one afternoon, wiping sweat from his brow. "You're safe here, I'll make sure of it." Her eyes softened as she looked at him, and she nodded slowly. "I know," she replied, "and I trust you. That makes all the difference." Their trust became more evident as the days passed. They shared meals together, often sitting quietly while the sun set, watching the sky turn shades of pink, orange, and purple. Sometimes they spoke of their pasts, her stories of life with her people, his memories of solitude on the ranch. But more often, they simply listened to one another. In this mutual presence, they found comfort, understanding, and a growing sense of partnership. One afternoon, as the heat of the day began to wane, they worked together to tend the garden. The woman's hands moved skillfully among the rows of vegetables, pulling weeds and checking plants for signs of disease. The rancher joined her, offering guidance and helping to lift heavier objects. Their conversation flowed easily, filled with gentle humor and shared observations. She told him about the herbs and plants used by her people for healing, and he listened with genuine interest, asking questions and imagining how those traditions could blend with the life they were building together. But life on the ranch was not without practical challenges. Supplies were limited, and the land required constant attention. The rancher and the woman worked together to prepare for the approaching seasons, storing food, repairing buildings, and making sure the animals were cared for. Every task reminded them that survival required effort, foresight, and teamwork. In these shared labors, their connection deepened, built not on mere attraction, but on mutual respect and a growing sense of responsibility for one another. Evenings were often the most intimate moments. After a long day of work, they would sit by the fire pit outside the house, watching the sky darken and listening to the sounds of the plains. Conversations ranged from practical matters, planning for the future, organizing work on the ranch to quieter reflections on life, hopes, and dreams. Sometimes, the Apache woman would share small pieces of wisdom from her people, stories of courage, resilience, and the importance of family. The rancher absorbed these lessons, recognizing how they could shape not only the land they lived on but the life they would share. One night after the animals had been fed and the chores completed, the woman looked at the rancher with a mixture of seriousness and vulnerability. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about what comes next, about the children we will have, and the life we need to create. I want to do everything I can to make it safe and strong." The rancher nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "We'll face it together," he said. "Every step of the way, you're not alone anymore." Her eyes shone with gratitude, and she reached out to take his hand. The warmth of that simple touch spoke volumes. It was a promise, a bond, and a declaration that they would meet challenges together, not as individuals but as partners in a shared life. As the days turned into weeks, they encountered small but meaningful obstacles. The weather brought unexpected storms that threatened crops and fences, and occasional intrusions from curious travelers reminded them that isolation was never absolute. Yet each challenge was met with cooperation and problem-solving, strengthening their trust and reliance on one another. They learned to anticipate each other's actions, to communicate without words, and to offer support when it was most needed. The Apache woman, once cautious and wary of trusting anyone, began to feel a sense of belonging she had never known. The rancher, once solitary and self-reliant, discovered the value of shared responsibility, of giving and receiving care in equal measure. Together, they created a rhythm of life that balanced labor, learning, and quiet moments of connection. One afternoon, as they repaired a section of the barn roof, the woman paused and looked out across the plains. "I can imagine a family here," she said quietly. "A safe home, children growing up knowing the land, knowing the strength of their parents." The rancher glanced at her, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. "It's possible," he said. "If we work together, we can build that life." She smiled, the warmth of hope and determination in her expression. "Then we will," she said simply, as if stating a fact that could not be denied. Their shared determination became the foundation for the days that followed. They organized supplies, prepared safe spaces for the children, and planned for the seasons ahead. Each task was more than work. It was preparation for a life they intended to build together. Every decision, every effort, was infused with a sense of purpose and care. Even as they faced challenges, laughter and joy were never absent. They found moments of playfulness in their work, teasing each other over small mistakes or celebrating minor victories. The ranch became not just a place of survival, but a space of life, growth, and connection. Each day ended with a quiet sense of accomplishment, strengthened bonds, and renewed hope for the future. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant hues of red and gold, They sat together on the porch. The rancher poured 2 cups of herbal tea, a mix of plants the woman had taught him to recognize and prepare. They sipped quietly, watching the sky change and the shadows lengthen. "I never thought I would find this," the rancher said, breaking the silence. "A life with someone I can trust, someone who makes this place feel like home." The woman's hand brushed against his, and she smiled softly. "Neither did I, but here we are, and it feels right." The stars began to emerge, twinkling in the clear night sky, and they sat together in silence, content with the bond they had formed. They had faced challenges, built trust, and prepared for the future, knowing that together they could meet whatever obstacles came their way. By the time they went inside for the night, a quiet peace had settled over them. Their lives were no longer simply about survival. They were about building, creating, and protecting a shared future. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities for growth, love, and understanding. The Apache woman and the rancher had transformed their relationship from simple trust into a partnership that could withstand hardships and celebrate joys together. And as they lay down to sleep, each felt a sense of calm and purpose. They had faced challenges, embraced responsibility, and strengthened their bond. The world beyond the ranch might still be unpredictable, but together they had the courage, patience, and determination to face it, and to create a life full of hope, love, and promise. The ranch was quiet in the early morning, with soft sunlight spilling over the hills and fields. Birds sang in the crisp air, and the wind carried the fresh scent of grass and earth. For the rancher and the Apache woman, each day had become a rhythm of work, care, and shared life. But today felt different. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, a feeling that the next chapter of their lives was about to begin. The woman moved slowly through the small house, her hands resting on her growing belly. She had been preparing for this moment for weeks, learning from the rancher and gathering supplies to ensure a safe arrival. Her movements were careful, yet there was a quiet determination in her eyes, a mix of hope, courage, and love. The rancher watched her from the doorway, feeling a mix of admiration, awe, and tenderness. He had seen her endure so much in her life, and now he would see her bring new life into the world. They had spoken often about this day, preparing themselves not only for the physical challenges, but also for the emotional weight of welcoming a child. The rancher had grown from a solitary man into a partner who understood responsibility, patience, and care. He had learned to trust, to love, and to embrace the joy and fear that came with building a family. As the morning progressed, the woman felt the first signs that the moment had come. She called softly to the rancher, who rushed to her side, his calm but steady presence offering reassurance. They had prepared a small, comfortable space in the house, a room filled with blankets, soft light, and warmth. It was humble, but it was perfect, a safe place to welcome new life. The rancher held her hand, guiding her through each step with gentle encouragement. He had learned how to support her, how to read the signs, and how to stay calm even as the intensity of the moment grew. She drew strength from his presence, knowing that together they could face anything. Hours passed, marked by quiet focus, soft breaths, and shared determination. The rancher spoke words of encouragement, reminding her of her strength and the new life they would soon hold. She focused on each breath, drawing courage from the love and trust they had built over the past weeks and months. The rancher never left her side, offering support, comfort, and unwavering care. Finally, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they welcomed their first child. The room was filled with a mixture of awe, joy, and relief. The woman held the baby close, tears of happiness streaming down her face. The rancher watched, his heart full, knowing that their lives had changed forever. Their bond had brought them to this moment, and now they were a family, complete, strong, and united. The days that followed were filled with the gentle rhythm of caring for their child and continuing life on the ranch. They worked together, taking turns, and supporting one another through sleepless nights, feedings, and the countless small tasks that came with raising a newborn. Their love grew deeper with each passing day, strengthened not only by joy but also by shared effort, patience, and understanding. The Apache woman, once wary of trust and human connection, found profound fulfillment in motherhood. She marveled at the small life in her arms, knowing that their child was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the love they had built together. She felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced, a connection to the rancher and the land that was now inseparable from her own identity. The rancher, too, discovered a new depth of emotion. The quiet solitude he had once valued was now filled with laughter, love, and responsibility. He learned to balance work, care, and attention, finding joy in even the smallest moments, watching their child sleep, hearing the first coos and giggles, and sharing quiet evenings with the woman he loved. The ranch became not just a home, but a place of life, growth, and love, a sanctuary built by their shared strength. As the seasons passed, their family continued to grow, not just in numbers, but in experience, knowledge, and shared memories. They worked together to maintain the ranch, taught their child about the land, and passed down lessons of courage, resilience, and trust. Each day was filled with challenges, as life always had its difficulties, but the love and unity they shared allowed them to face each obstacle with confidence and hope. Visitors occasionally came, curious about the family on the ranch. Some were skeptical, but the rancher and the woman faced judgment with quiet strength and dignity. They had built something unbreakable, a life based on honesty, love, and shared purpose. They did not need approval from others. Their family was enough, a testament to the power of trust, courage, and partnership. Evenings were their favorite time of day. They often sat on the porch together, holding their child, watching the sun set over the rolling hills. The sky would turn brilliant shades of pink, orange, and purple, reflecting in their eyes as they spoke quietly of dreams, hopes, and the life they were building together. The child's laughter and curiosity filled the air, a constant reminder of the future they had fought to create. As their child grew, the rancher and the woman found themselves teaching lessons not only of survival and work, but also of kindness, courage, and integrity. They instilled values from both their backgrounds: the strength, resilience, and wisdom of the Apache woman, and the practicality, patience, and careful attention of the rancher. Together, they nurtured a child who would understand the importance of love, family, and the bond between people who trusted and cared for one another. The years brought challenges: harsh winters, storms that tested the fences, and illnesses that required careful attention. But through each trial, the family grew closer. They celebrated successes, shared meals, and continued to build their home with love and care. The ranch became more than a place to live. It became a legacy, a home where trust, courage, and love formed the foundation of every day. In quiet moments, the rancher would often reflect on the journey that had brought them here. He remembered the day he had first met the woman, wary and cautious, seeking shelter from the dangers of the world. He thought of the trust they had built, the love that had grown, and the family they had created together. Each memory reminded him of the extraordinary strength of the woman by his side and the life they had forged through partnership and courage. The Apache woman, too, reflected on the journey. She had arrived at the ranch weary and uncertain, carrying the weight of fear and a life on the run. Now she had found not only safety but love, purpose, and a family. She saw in their child a blend of both her past and the rancher's world, a symbol of hope, continuity, and the beauty of shared lives. She understood that together, they had created something far greater than survival. They had built a life full of meaning, joy, and love. Even as their child grew, exploring the fields, learning about animals, and playing among the hills, the rancher and the woman continued to nurture each other's dreams and ambitions. They shared responsibilities, supported one another's growth, and cherished the simple joys of family life. Every day was a reminder of what they had built together, a life of love, courage, and unity. As the sun set on another day, casting golden light over the ranch and illuminating the faces of the family, the woman looked at the rancher and smiled. "We did it," she said softly, her voice filled with warmth and contentment. He took her hand in his, feeling the weight and beauty of those words. "Yes," he replied, "we built this together, and it's only the beginning." The night descended quietly over the plains, the stars twinkling above like distant promises. The family lay together, safe and content, knowing that no matter what challenges came their way, they had each other. Their love, trust, and courage had created a life filled with hope, joy, and purpose. They had turned unexpected beginnings into a shared journey, and that journey had become the most important story of their lives. And so, the rancher, the Apache woman, and their child lived each day fully, tending the land, nurturing each other, and embracing the future. Their story was one of resilience, trust, and love, a story that began with shelter and caution, and grew into a family strong enough to face the world together. Every sunrise brought new promise, and every sunset was a celebration of the life they had built, a life full of hope, warmth, and unbreakable bonds.